now we will broadcast for you the news in English on Radio Free Syria.
Welcome to our news hour in English. I am MarwanKADRO and I will be with you during this news hour from Radio Free Syria. We will start with the headlines. The local coordination committees in Syria. Wednesday in Syria has ended with a total of 144 documented marches, including 7 children and 3 women. 39 marches in Aleppo, 42 marches in Damascus and its suburbs, 27 marches in Homs, 13 marches in Idlib, 7 marches in Hama, 6 marches in Hasaka, 3 marchers in each of Raqqa, Deir ez-Zor and Dar'a, and 1 marcher in Al-Qunaytra. The committees have also documented a total of 374 points of shelling across Syria, including 13 points from warplanes shelling. 2 points have been recorded from the use of phosphorus bombs, and 1 point each from cluster bombs, thermobaric bombs, and TNT barrel. Artillery shelling has been recorded as 146 points and was most violent in Damascus, followed by 130 more points of mortar shelling and 80 points of missile strikers. The FSA clashed also with the regime forces and thugs in 133 locations, in which 2 planes were down. The first was in Karnas and the second in Kafr and Hama. In Idlib, the FSA could liberated the military gas station as the international road of Aleppo, Latakia, and the residential military camp. As for Qarmid and Shabiha camps, they were targeted by heavy weapons. In Damascus and its suburbs, many checkpoints were hit by the FSA in Harran al-Awamid and Ghandur barrier in Qadam neighborhood. Damascus International Airport and military vehicles departure were also targeted by local-made bombs, along with hitting the checkpoint in Mashtal in Homs by mortars and destroying regime military vehicles and tanks in some cities and towns all over Syria. Damascus have declared today that the Israeli Air Forces have shelled a science building in Jarmana area in Damascus. They said that the Israeli forces have entered the Syrian air from Lebanon, as the Syrian radars didn't discover this warplane before it started to shell Jarmana area in Damascus. It is the first shelling on Syria since 2007, as heavy battles continues in several areas in Syria. Meanwhile, the Syrian army denied that the Israeli forces have shelled a convoy that was on his way to Lebanon. Moreover, heavy battles are still going on between the Free Syrian Army and the Assad forces, as the Free Syrian Army have shelled the Sufyan al-Thawri area in Damascus. The FSA have shelled Damascus International Airport, as a fire have been seen in the building of Mohammed Hamsho in Al-Maliki neighborhood in Damascus. In Damascus countryside, more than 6 people have been killed, as dozens have been injured due to the heavy shelling on a bus full of civilians. In Al-Qalamun, as the renewed shelling on Al-Zubaybiyah continued. Heavy shelling on the eastern area of Daraya, as yet another convoy was on their way from Al-Sabbara checkpoint and Mazza military airport from the early hours this morning. Heavy shelling on Mu'addamiyat al-Sham and Daraya, as video shows heavy shelling on these areas. Mortars have been dropped on the city of Douma and Beit Saham have been also under heavy gunfire, as also mortars have been dropped there. Moving to the northern area of Syria, and particularly in Aleppo, activists said that they have found 7 unidentified bodies in Quake River in central Aleppo, as the total of deaths that have been found in the river have increased to 114. Heavy battles in the western areas between the Free Syrian Army and the Assad forces, and particularly in Al-Shihan, Al-Mugambo, and Al-Sakhra neighborhoods. Several mortars have been dropped on these areas, and also on Al-Nil Street and Al-Andalus Street. Heavy battles between the Free Syrian Army and the Assad forces near the intelligence services and Al-Muhallab military base. Sham News Network added that rebels have attacked the checkpoint of Shihan using all kinds of weapons. The village of Zerba in Aleppo's countryside was also under heavy bombardments as the Assad forces have used tanks. Meanwhile, the first aid for the civilians in Azaz have been delivered as Suqur al-Shahba Brigade have transferred these aids to the city of Azaz from Latakia. Moreover, more than 10 brigades have started of what they call the Battle of Qadisiyah to liberate Quwairis military airport. Moving to Hama, Syrian Revolution Committee said that the rebels were to drop down a MiG airstrike force of the regime in the village of Ain al-Qom in Hamas countryside. Moreover, several people have been injured due to the heavy shelling on Halfaya as more bombardments have been heard on the villages of Karnas and Kafr Zeta and Al-Mughyar and Hurayta and al-Nar and Al-Banna as many people have fled these areas. In Aqrab, several people have been killed as others have been injured due to the heavy bombardments as more than 50 mortars have been dropped on Kafr Buda from Al-Sheikh checkpoint. In Homs, heavy shelling on the city of Talbisa and particularly on Al-Mashjar neighborhood. Meanwhile, the warplanes are shelling Talbisa and Al-Rastan and Jobar and Sultaniya neighborhoods as these areas are shelled daily. In Latakia, battles between the Turkish police and the Assad forces near Kassa border point. Meanwhile, Assad gang members have kidnapped 3 men and a woman and a child on the way Latakia Beirut as they have taken them to a village near to Qardaha as they entered a house and forced them to undress themselves. The men have been found dead. The Assad forces have shelled Salma village with rocket launchers as civilians in Slayba neighborhood in Latakia went on the streets to demonstrate against the Assad regime. In Hasaka, 11 people have been killed as the Assad forces have shelled a bus full of civilians near a Nabak bridge. Meanwhile, heavy battles between the Free Syrian Army and the Assad forces continued in the countryside of Al-Hasaka. In Al-Riqa, heavy shelling from MiG airstrike forces on a checkpoint of the Free Syrian Army in Al-Mansura. Heavy bombardments also on Al-Tabaqa city in Riqa's countryside. General news now. Robert Ford, the American ambassador in Syria, said that the US will not interfere in Syria even if the crisis will endure for months. He added that the United States is trying to isolate the Assad regime. He also added that the United States will support the Syrian people with $155 million as a humanitarian aid, as he added that he has worked for more than 30 years in the Middle East. However, he have never seen a proud and a brave people like the Syrians. This was it for today. Thank you very much for listening. I am MarwanKADRO, along with me Executive Manager Islam Al-Idilbi. Please follow us on freesyriaradio.webs.com. You can also reach us through Skype on Syrian342. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Right now, we will broadcast for you the news in English on Radio Free Syria.